Welcome, everyone. This is the Ascension Podcast. I'm Pat Mitchell. With me, as always, is Adam and Jennifer. And joining us today is a special guest. He's going to talk about an experience that he just had. His name is Minh. We've known him for quite a while. Real great guy. And welcome. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
Yes, it's not easy coming out and talking about, a personal trip or an experience. This podcast has a lot to do with plant medicines, a lot to do with like mainly mushrooms and kind of tweaking your not only your personal but your professional side as well, specifically with day trading. Day trading is something that's like super mental. For those of you that are watching, you probably know that, and that's what we focus up a lot on. And what's your background? How did you, what's your story? We know you, but nobody else does. So,
well, I originally was, I started working in the automotive collision industry, fresh out of high school, mainly into like cars and stuff like that. And started working for a man named Brian Gorley. And I was with him for a long time. He was a really good guy. He pretty much took me under his wing and taught me how to prep and paint cars and whatnot. And then from there, I guess it got really slow. So he had to lay me off. And then from that, I went to the custom automotive industry, and I was doing that for a while, and I just got so just worn out, and
yeah.
I ended up doing pretty much like everybody else, like Amazon FBA, which is like wholesale drop shipping and all that crap. And that was doing okay, and then everybody caught wind of that, and then everybody started doing that, and then that's when it went downhill. And I was hanging out at a friend's shop one time, and then he was just like, "Hey, dude," I told him, I was like, "Do you want to like?" I wanted to invest like Warren Buffett because I heard him around that time. So I was like, "Dude, I want to get into investing." And then he was like, "Dude, have you ever heard of day trading?" But he never knew you. So
Yeah.
I just started going on the internet looking, on day trading, and then I found your service and stuff like that, and stuck with you ever since. So
Right on. No,
yeah.
that's, I think a lot of people, they get fed up with their jobs and everything else. And it's just not for them. I think there's just a certain type of person that is like just not meant to do that 9 to 5. And I know everybody will, if you were to ask everybody, 100% of the people, it's like, are you meant to work a 9 to 5 job? The resounding answer would be no. But it's a small portion of people that actually have the balls to go through with it and make that change. So it's like that right there is like a huge first step, right? And it's a scary step because you don't really know what you're getting into. And then once you do get into it, you start to realize, well, there's way more to this. It's not just about the actual act of day trading, like executing the trades. It has really very little to do with that. A lot of people focus 100% on that. And that's why we focus a lot, well, obviously on that. There's a strategy and a risk strategy and all that fun stuff. But it's mainly the mentality, because it's not really a battle with you against anyone else. It's a battle with you and yourself. And that's the biggest battle, right? Because it's very easy to lie to ourselves. And I think that's probably like the biggest point right there, is like that it's so easy to like tell yourself things that just make you feel better, right? And we all do it. And there's got to be some sort of a way to get over that. And I think that's where this comes in, because when you end up going on a journey or a trip, you can't lie to yourself. It's that subconscious coming out that is telling you exactly what you need to know. So what's your experience with mushrooms?
Well, like whenever we were in chat, you were the one that introduced, mainly the members and everybody about microdosing, and I don't know, it kind of like piqued my interest, and I would be the first to admit that I usually have an anger issue, like things like, when you're driving a car, someone cuts you off and whatnot. I usually tend to get pretty upset, and just my relationship with my wife and the kids and whatnot. Like at the beginning of our relationship, it was really everything's like it's like a honeymoon phase
Of
almost,
course.
right? And then after that, as time goes on, like she would notice that I was, kind of like a little aggressive to the kids and whatnot,
Hmm.
and a little bit to her when things weren't really to my liking or approval, so to speak. Like I would kind of like, not lash out, but you can just tell the energy was off. Like there was
Yeah, really
tension.
short with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
And
think I think everybody does that, right? And you got to catch yourself, right? Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 So then when you introduced me to microdosing and then, I tried it, that's when I started noticing like little changes from the last interview, we had, like I told you, like, a car cut me off and I was like, you know what, maybe he has somewhere he needs to go. So I automatically think like that. And, but I never had a actual spiritual journey, until recent. And
Hmm.
that's whenever, I was talking about, um, I was really debating on having that. And then I was talking to Jen and Adam, and they were like, I think you need to try this. And, uh, I was not skeptical, of course, because I noticed a huge difference with microdosing, but I just never had a spiritual journey before. And I decided to try it out a couple days
Yeah, and
ago.
I think it can be scary that first step because
Hmm.
again, there's so much like just like nonsense information, and you see a lot of people like anytime you deal with psychedelics in any respect, whether it's LSD, mushrooms, DMT, ayahuasca, you name it, doesn't matter.
Hmm.
It's always exaggerated, right? Like you see videos of like some sort of a trip or a psychedelic experience and it's like, well, that looks crazy, not interested in that, right? Like it
Hmm.
looks so uber intense that it's like that turns people off. And that's what we're trying to do with this is give more of like a realistic perspective of what to expect, because I think there's a lot of people that are on the fence about it that might be interested in it, but they're scared. And I think like the one thing that always comes to mind, and even when I do it now, where I take more of a macro dose, like a bigger dose, and go on a trip, it's there's always it's not apprehension or like being scared or something like that, but your heart kind of races a little bit because it's like it's the fear of the unknown, which is total just human nature, right? But literally every single time I have ever done them, I have never had a bad trip. I've had trips that have been uncomfortable. I've had trips that have been like, a little difficult, but nothing to where it's like, oh my God, this is crazy. Everybody's face is melting. The world's coming to an end. That's ridiculous. Like, obviously a person can always put themselves in that space, but it's about doing that little bit of preparation first and kind of just mentally preparing yourself for it. Like, but I think that that's what it is. Not to make this like too long-winded, but
Hmm.
I do think it's worth noting that that's what people think. They think it's going to be some sort of like just like insane ride, like some sort of like Hunter Thompson trip or something. And it's like, it's not like that. Like
Right.
it can be, but the majority of the time it's not like that. And it's not. And on the opposite end of the spectrum too, when people make it out to be rainbows and unicorns too, like I don't like that either when people only put the positive out there, because if everything was just positive, like everything in your life was just positive, you're missing out on that other half, the half that actually builds you and rebuilds you. So it's like people just need to be honest about the situation and say how it is. Is it, can you have wonderful experiences? Of course you can. You can have life-changing experiences, but you can also have life-changing experiences that maybe aren't so wonderful. They're maybe a little bit uncomfortable, that make you kind of dive deep into your feelings and stuff like that. And I think that that's another issue too with guys, is they're afraid to kind of express that side of themselves, right? Like we get told from such a young age, it's like boys don't cry and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, if you're walking around and you can't have a conversation with someone without bursting out into tears, yeah, you probably need a lot more help than just this. But
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with diving deep and actually exploring yourself. And, we take so much time to get to know people, just other people, but so many people lack that personal relationship with themselves. Like, and how did you find that? Like, speaking about like a personal relationship with yourself, not to jump too far ahead into this.
Mhm.
What did you find with that? Like, did you find that, without going into too much, because we're going to obviously come back to that, but did you find that it was more maybe personal than what you thought it would be? Or like, what was your initial thought as soon as it kind of like started coming up? What was your thought? Because that's
It
always
got,
interesting. People always want to
it
know
got,
about that come up.
yeah, it got really, really, really deep, like really personal. It was something that, since I had a couple days to process of what happened and whatnot, and Jen was telling me to get a notepad and
Yeah.
with a pen and just write down your experiences and stuff like that. And let's just say I went into deep waters. Let's just say that, and I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting that because
Hey,
when Jen,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we go, I just want to interject here because before we go into your experience, I think it's important that we maybe capture some of the buildup to the
Mhm,
experience,
mhm,
so that people who are watching who are new,
Yeah, that makes sense.
there's a series of stages that have to happen and a series of decisions you have to make.
mhm,
It's like, if you've ever, uh, I don't know, when you're young, did you ever go to like some bridge or a dam where there's a high place to jump off 40, 50 feet, or even jumping off a high dive, right? There's this moment where you're about to reach a point of no return, and it begins with a decision, and you can't jump until you make that decision. So the decision to move forward happens in your mind first, and then you jump. And then once you jump, you're not getting back up there on the ledge,
no.
right? Forget it. Whatever happens, happens. So tell us a little bit about like what was that deciding factor that I'm going to jump? And because once you make that decision, stuff goes in motion. You're telling friends, you're talking to people, you're mentally preparing yourself, but that can't happen. What was it like? What was the deciding factor? Is it I've had enough of this? I'm ready to grow. I'm repeating the same mistakes in life, or I'm just curious, right? Nothing wrong. I just want to go for it. I need something new in my life. I want to try this out. What was your thought process leading up to that moment?
To be honest with you, like just as of late, with my personal life, like I felt, I don't want to say stuck, but just stagnant.
Mhm.
When we're in chat, when we're, trading and whatnot, and we get off, after we're done trading, I would like go study. And I noticed that I wasn't retaining a lot of the information. I would have to constantly like backtrack and rewatch the video lessons that Pat puts out and whatnot. And I was just like, man, why am I not like, I would just read it, I'll understand it, and then like I'll forget it. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's just like I just felt like with my personal life, I'm just there. That's the best way I can explain it. It's just,
Autopilot.
yeah, just
Yeah. Yeah.
there, you know?
Yeah.
And
So you're kind of looping,
pretty much
and you can't
just,
get out of that loop. Is that what you kind of start to observe in your behavior?
yeah, I
Yeah, you
noticed
get kind of
that.
an uplift, you do well and things, and then you
Yeah,
go back down, you make a mistake, and then you're down. And
yeah.
then,
And it's
oh, why did I do this? And then you kind of dig yourself out of it,
mhm.
right? Is that
It's just like well, Pat doesn't know this, so I might as well just say it now. It's just like I would do really well whenever I'm trading, right? And then like it- it's almost like I'll get into this kind of like it's a series of decisions that I made that I just feel like, okay, I think not that I can do it on my own, but like I felt like, okay, I'm at a stage where, let me kind of like stick my neck out there, so to speak, a little bit. No good. And it kind of like pushed me back. And it was like on the days that I do well, whenever I trade, my emotions is high. And then some days when I'm doing, I make a bad decision, my emotion is down. So it's like this endless wave of just highs and lows, peaks and valleys, where it's just, for me, it's just like and then I'm like studying, and then I'm not retaining enough of the information. And then it trickles down into my personal life to where I'm just like, you know what? I need to like, I felt like I needed a line thrown out there for me. And that's whenever I decided, I was like, you know what? Let's just give this a shot and see where it takes me.
Yeah, I think like I've always referred to that as being stuck in autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to get like that, like, dude, all the time. Before I became a trader, I was in the house. I was just there, and it was like the world is going on around me, and it's like I'm just on autopilot. I'm going through the motions, and it's just like, and I don't like being like that, because you're not really listening when people are speaking. You're again, you're just on autopilot. It's like the best way I can possibly describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody kind of gets stuck in that loop. And what you were saying about, because I've seen that, and I do want to talk about that because this still does have to do with day trading as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that 1,000 times, and I've even talked about it on screen share. When people want to, when you start getting that consistency, and you get to the point and you tell yourself, it's like, okay, I need to go and stand on my own 2 feet and do things my own way. You
Mm-hmm.
have to fight that urge so much. And that can always get taken the wrong way. Like, I'm trying to keep you chained. That's not it. It's like professional athletes, high level CEOs, everyone has a coach. Don't Never do that, because that guy is going to keep you grounded. If he's worth his weight, he's going to keep you grounded. And yes, we want to try things out on our own to see if it works, but it's almost like a level of self-destruction, because you know what works. We see it happening all the time. Like, we do the same, and we place the same trade every single day. You're going to get bored. That is going to happen, right? Like, there's if you're bored as a day trader, that is a good thing. You want to be bored. And again, it's that game of opposites. So I don't want to get too far off track and start talking about too much into the trading thing, but it's something that they'll almost lose themselves because they get bored, because the consistency is there. Yeah, you're going to have those roller coasters and everything, but that's normal. You want that. You want to be bored. Okay. You don't want that big up and down swing. You want a nice, neutral, easy peasy path. It takes a long time to get used to. That was one of the hardest things for me to get used to, was that boredom, or it's not complacency, but it's almost like that, but in a good way, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, everything is just going, right? And you're going through the motions on that. And again, that can be a good thing. And that's why it's such a balance of opposites. It's really difficult to wrap a person's head around it, because in your home life, you don't want to be on autopilot. Nobody does. Nobody wants to just go through the motions. It's no way to live. It sucks. I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in front of those screens, in front of the monitors, looking at the charts, you want to be on autopilot. Strategy is about autopilot, right? So I think that's one thing to just really point out. And like Adam was saying, so that build up now, so you're getting to the point where it's like, okay, I need to do something, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what kind of led you to that? Because there's obviously a million different things that you could do, and obviously I know what I talk about with microdosing as well as macrodosing magic mushrooms. They can that's probably your easiest path, and it's something that you would be a little more familiar with, because I do talk about it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But what led you to that, instead of, I don't know, going and talking to a therapist, which I'm definitely not interested in? But it's like, what I'm trying to get at is, there's a million different things you could do. What led you to that exactly?
I mean, I would say because of you, because like whenever you would, mention your experiences and stuff, and then, like I'm really close friends with Jen and Adam too. So like I reached out to them and I was talking to them, and then Jen's like, you know what? And she told me her personal experiences and whatnot, and it was just like I'm doing that. Like that was pretty
Mhm.
much like it wasn't. I don't want to say it wasn't like a no brainer, but it just made a lot of sense. And I was like, okay, like microdosing worked for me. It helped with my anger and whatnot, and just it just kind of like repositioned my way of thinking, so to speak. And then that's
Yep.
when I was like, you know what? And then she's like, macrodose is like, it's it's gonna take you and kind of like rediscover yourself in a sense, or find yourself, because I
Yeah.
felt lost. That's
Yeah.
how I felt, you
Well,
know.
what I was going to say is I know, like, that day when you called and we were, talking about, where you were and you felt stuck. And it's like, for me,
Mhm.
I'm at the point where if I start feeling like that, I'm like, uh-oh, I know it's time. I need to do a spiritual journey, because I'm just like, my brain is like tapped out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I can't dig anymore into my subconscious on my own. I can't solve this particular problem or whatever. So
Hmm.
whenever I was like, wow, sound like me, with the same issues and stuff. So that's why I suggested it, because I really felt like it would be of use to you. Like I said, I know in the
Hmm.
other podcast, I really feel like the majority of our society could benefit from doing these.
Yeah,
And
and
Absolutely.
plus whenever you when I was talking to you, Jen, and you were like, well, that's what you said about Pat. You pretty much said that you mentioned that whenever Pat felt, that way, he would go on a spiritual journey, and I was like, that's when I was like, let's do it, and
Mhm.
I didn't even hesitate. I was just like, I needed this,
It was, you knew it was time, right? You were ready to look in the mirror, and you're
Yeah.
ready to go deeper to figure out why are things not clicking that should be, rather than
Hmm.
tolerate being stagnant.
Hmm. That's you hit the nail on the head right there. So that's why I did it. So.
Yeah, there's always two types of people, and you can break basically 100% of the people on this planet into two groups of people, and
Hmm.
it's the thinkers and the doers. Both have their role, but
Hmm.
doers, they'll always get further ahead, because you can be a thinker and a doer, but you can't be just a thinker and not a doer. If that made any sense, if you know what I'm getting
Yeah.
at, like
Yeah.
you have to follow through. You have to go through with things. I told this on the last one. Like, my brother's the type of person, he's had all of these great ideas, but he's never followed through with it. And then he gets bitter about it. Like, oh, I invented that years ago. No,
Mhm.
you didn't. You had the idea of it, but you didn't have the balls to move it forward. And it's like, you have to go through with things. You have to actually do things. You got to get off that couch, so to speak.
Hmm.
And that's great, and it shows me, like, that right there is such a it's probably the number one attribute of a successful person is getting to a limit, getting to some sort of plateau,
Mhm.
and
Hmm.
then knowing that you need something to get over that plateau, because you'll just stay at that plateau forever. You might come to this realization on your own over time, but how much
Hmm.
time are you going to give it? Like, are you going to wait around for the next 5 years looking for some sort of light bulb moment, or are you going to, like, just fucking do something about it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what separates those two types of people, are the ones that will, they'll just wait forever, man, and life's going to pass them by, and then you're going to be 70 years old looking back on your life and like, damn. And that sucks. I don't want that. I've seen that. I know what that looks like.
Hmm.
And to me, that's a torturous hell. That's what that person is in. And I think that that's why a lot of people get really, um, they just close themselves down in their older age, is because they look back on their lives and they know that they could have done so much more and they didn't do it. And that time is past, right? We only have so much
Pass
time.
them by.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's why older people eventually just kind of devolve into depression and stuff like that because they look back and they're like, what did I do with my life? You know, I sat and watched TV or whatever, you know, instead of, you know, actually going for my dreams and stuff. That's absolutely got to be devastating.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine that. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And like I've said, like I've seen that with my own dad, like, and it's just like, it makes it real hard. It's hard to stomach, man. You know, like, yeah, it's rough because you know the regrets. I don't want to die with any regrets without being like, oh man, why didn't I do that? Right? Like, I don't want to live like that. And it's like, that right there, that is two different types of people, the people that will do and the people that will just think about it. And that right there is like, it's such a big step forward. Like, and it's almost like, it's like a courageous act. Like, you have courage, you have stomach, you have grit, you have sand. You are trying to get over that plateau. You're doing whatever it takes. That's what it's about, right? And that's why there's only 10% successful people on this planet. That's what it is. It's because that 10% are the ones that have the stomach to push forward and get over those plateaus at any cost, right? And it also helps knowing people. Like, you're not just, these aren't people that are just random people on the internet. You know our names, you know our faces, you know, there's years of content. You get to know how this person is. Like, is this person full of shit? You start getting, because we live in a new age. Like, we meet people online. This is something normal, right? So, and you obviously need a little more time when you find someone on the internet. And I find people, there's a disconnect between, you know, how they kind of interact with people socially in the real world and then online. And they'll just jump full steam ahead with someone that they just met on the internet. Well, the internet's kind of a weird place where you can kind of be in whoever you want. It's easy to fool people. So you need some sort of a track record, right? You need some sort of it's like, has anything caught up to this person over the course of, like, 10 years, right? If the answer is no, then okay, I'm sure what he's saying is he believes it. He's not just trying to sell somebody a personality or a persona. What you see is what you get. So I think that helps too. It's like, because, we've all been hit up on, like, Instagram and Facebook and everything else. It's like, you mention anything about this stuff, anything with mushrooms, you'll see underneath this post, when we post this, it's going to be 1 million people trying to, like, sell you shit. And it's like, well, what kind of a lunatic would be going to someone that's like, yo, I got the plug, right? Like, what are you going to learn from someone like that? Like, it's so ridiculous. So I think it helps talking about this stuff. And I just know, like, how many people are probably just, like, starved or, like, craving this type of conversation, because it's a conversation that needs to happen. It needs to start happening more and more and more. And, it does take a certain act of courage to go through with it, because to bring it back, what I was talking about at the beginning, there's a lot of really just like bullshit information out there. And that's with everything. But with any type of psychedelics, I find it's horrible, and it turns people off. You either have the real far one side leaning that is just, like, so flaky, and, like, it's like they all have their own language. It's like, can you just be a real person? Can you just be, like, a normal person talking about this? Like, you can't act like that in real life. And if you do, like, holy Jesus, man, like, you need to fucking get a grip. And then you have the other side that are just like a bunch of kids, where it's like, the psychedelic, whatever, you know what I'm trying to get at. Yeah. And just to be in the middle, right? Where it's like, you're just having a conversation amongst friends, right? Where you're just like, you're genuinely trying to help someone, I think is a big thing. So I'm definitely looking forward to doing more of these, because this is already, really, really interesting. That's what I want to ask. What were your expectations coming into this? So you've kind of got over that plateau, right? You're like, okay, I'm gonna do this. This is what I'm gonna do. You talk to people that you trust and respect. They gave you the answer. You said, yes, I'm going to do this. Now, what are your expectations? Like, what did you want to get out of this, or what did you think was going to happen?
I actually didn't go in with any expectations. When Jen was telling me about her personal experience, I low key was kind of like mentally preparing myself to somewhat have the same experience as her.
Yeah, yeah.
I kind of thought about that.
But the thing is it was like whenever I was doing it, right? Whenever I was already in the moment and stuff, mentally I had prepared my mind to have the same experience as her. But then I realized that like I was thinking that my mind was preoccupied on having that experience that she had. But then like after a split second, I was like, you know what? I started thinking to myself, I was like, her experience is nowhere where my experience is. So I need to just fall back and let this happen naturally, and whatever comes into my mind comes into my mind. So that's what happened.
Briefly for reference, just so because we're going to get to yours, man,
Mhm.
but let's juxtapose that, because I mean, what a brilliant way to be thinking about this, because that's the 100% probably the best answer, is to wipe the slate of expectation. That's a very hard thing to do, but it sounds like you naturally went that direction, which is amazing, because bias is what can actually make a bad trip, an expectation, and
you can't force it,
right. So what was yours?
Well, I felt kind of, for me, every time I always have conversations with God, for me, I was like super, really, really bullied as a kid. I mean, like bad, because we were, not really well off. We were pretty poor, and like the kids in school really picked on me because of that. And so the first couple of journeys I did, it was actually one of the craziest parts about one of them is I had this, I'm not going to say her name, but I had this like nemesis, and she would like
outer. No.
She's, well, let me tell you the story. Okay. So she was like, always try to pick fights with me, just tortured me, and, would follow me around, and just was a terrible, terrible person. And, in that kind of, it's like a pack of dogs, everybody kind of started picking on me. And I found out, well, in this one journey, I was talking to God, and he showed me that she was actually very abused by her father. And that's why she acted that way in school. And like I could see, I had never been to her. I mean, as far as I know, it's not her childhood home or whatever, but I could see her getting hit by her dad as a kid. And that's why she acted that way. And then I found out like 6 months later that she had killed herself. And she had a long history of drug abuse. And then her brother also died of a drug overdose. And I found out the reason why they did that is because their father really abused them. I mean, I would talk about freaking mind blowing. Like 6 months later, I found out that was the truth.
And you were able to forgive her.
Yeah. But I had already just been like, God, my heart just broke for her in that moment. And I was like, I felt completely free from that,
The hate, right?
So that's, and I was just like, you know what? And it made me realize that, all these kids that were picking on me probably had their own shit that they were dealing with. And that's why they were acting that way. Yeah. And so it also kind of made me see that a lot of those people really peaked in high school. So why am I even really care about them anyways? So, but I'm like, why am I still care? But, it's something that I had never, I mean, like, honestly, I remember I came out of it and I was just like, why did this even come up? I don't even think about this, or so I think I don't think about it. Right. But I remember, poor man, I'm like, oh yeah, I have all these conversations with God, and and so poor man, I was like, okay, that sounds good, Jen, and I'm like, well, it's not always, rainbows and teddy bears or whatever, sometimes God tells you stuff you don't really want to hear.
Yeah.
But so I felt bad because it's like I think Min was kind of okay. I'm gonna learn some lessons, and then he gets kind of walloped.
I thought I was gonna talk to God too. So I literally thought I was gonna talk to God. So I was like mentally preparing myself. That didn't happen. Didn't talk to God or anything like that. So
It might later. Every
maybe,
is
maybe.
completely different. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it's not the same. I mean, it's not like you're gonna. If you do another one in 3 months, you may revisit the same subject if you're not done dealing with it, but
Yeah.
it may never come up again. I mean, it just depends on how much progress you've made, applying what you learned kind of thing.
And I think that's a really good point too. Like, with your experience, Jen, and I think that this is how it does help people work through things, because it's not just from your perspective anymore. It almost helps you step and walk a mile in another person's shoes. Like we've all heard the saying, hurt people, right? And we can say that a million times, but when you get shown something like that and you see it, because you see it in your mind's eye, it's there. It's like, it's a movie. It's right there. It's in front of you. It's that vivid.
Right.
Then it becomes real, and then you can soak it in.
Right.
And again, it helps you gain that perspective. Like, life's about perspective. If you only have your own perspective, you get in that echo chamber that we've talked about before too. And you need something to be able to push you past that, because you cannot just view the world from your own, being in your own shoes. That's something that I have to work on. I know I'm a selfish person, and I justify that from time to time because selfishness is what led me to where I am now. I know that I had to get selfish, right? But if you don't stop yourself from being selfish, now that life is very comfortable, you'll continue to be that way, where in order to get yourself over plateaus or to find a level of success, you may need to do things. I'm not saying compromise your integrity, but I'm saying that you may need to do things that you wouldn't normally do. I'm not a selfish person by nature, but I knew that I had to. I would always put everybody first, and you can no longer do that anymore. Now you need to put yourself first, and you need to get your shit together, and you need to make things happen. So then after you get there, you can go back to helping. Right? Like, so you may need to step outside of what your nature is a little bit. And it's catching yourself after the fact too. And this is where this helps, because it gives you that perspective of walking a mile in someone else's shoes. And you realize, oh shit, like that person probably had a rough go. That person's day is probably 10,000 times worse than my day right now. So how about I just let that shit go and let this guy continue on just doing what he's doing, because that fucking dude is miserable. I'm not. I don't want to let that affect me. And that's something I still need to work on, because like Min, people's driving, people's actions, they drive me nuts. But I do find that this helps tone it down a bit. Now I don't want to reach through my car window and rip their throat out. Now I will just stop, keep going, might be pissed off for a second, but it's very easy to let go. It's not going to immediately change you. There's still work that needs to be done. And that's what I'm getting at with saying that. And I said it that way for a reason, because it's not something like, it's not just a switch that gets flipped. There's a switch and it's kind of lifting up and it's about to get flipped. And you need to keep pushing to get that switch totally flipped, right? But that's great though that Jen brought that up, because man, that's what it is. It gives you perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Min, you want to kind of maybe take us into your experience? I mean, here's what we're here for. This is let's just hear you tell it how it unfolded.
Yeah, so originally, whenever Jen gave me the instructions on how to, go ahead and go about that, I ended up starting off with like a half dose instead of like a full, because she pretty much mentioned like for you you should start with like a gram,
Yeah.
like 1 full gram. But since I'm really sensitive, whenever I microdose, and I take a very minuscule amount and I'll feel it. So I was like, you know what, let me go ahead and let me do half a gram, and then um, follow the instructions like she told me. And because like you can always take more, but you can't take it out, right?
Yes.
So I was like, you know what? Let me start with half. So I started with half, drank made the tea out of it, drank it, and then just laid down and put like I didn't have like a mask, to cover my eyes, so I put like a black t-shirt, over my eyes, and then I just put on like some instrumental music, like high frequency, no lyrics or anything like that, just very, the music would have to be like very uplifting. You don't want to listen to like rap or all that, any of that stuff. So I was listening to it, and then next thing I know, like I started feeling something, and then I started seeing like clouds, so to speak, like white clouds that would just appear and disappear, appear and disappear. And then it kind of just stayed flat.
Yeah.
And then that's like an hour went by, and then I was like, okay, I'm not seeing anything. So that's when I know I should take the other half. So I ended up taking the other half, laid back down, and then next thing I know, like when I was listening to the music and the tunes and stuff like that, I felt like a very sense of joy, right? I was really happy, and then I saw my mom and my dad. Um, they were looking at me. They were really young, and they were looking at me, and then they looked at each other, and then they died, and they turned into these old trees. And I started like really like just looking at them, and I'm just like, I was kind of like, okay, like they were just like they looked like they were at peace. And I just kept seeing, my dad and my mom, and it just like those old trees, that the bark trees, that just
Yeah.
you just turned into that. And I kind of like got a little freaked out, right? And then I took off my the shirt, because I was just like, what the heck? And I just sat there, and then I calm myself down and whatnot, and I
Yeah.
was like, okay, everything's cool. So let me go ahead and put the shirt back on. So then I put the shirt back on, and then I was just trying to think positive, I was like, okay. And then I saw like my wife. I saw, every single memory that we've ever done together. Like we went to LA, we went to Hermosa Beach, Vegas, like all these trips that we went to the Philippines, like every memory that I ever spent with her, it started rushing towards me. And then I just felt like an overwhelming amount of love coming from her. Just like I've never felt that before. It was just piling on. And then I just kept seeing her smile, like us hugging and whatnot. And then it kept like, it was just a ton of love just coming from her. And then next thing I know, like, I started thinking about my dad again. And then I just like started dry heaving and crying.
Hmm.
Like I was crying, like I can't even explain how much I was crying. Like the last time I could remember ever crying was uh, when he passed away,
Yeah.
and I was on the plane headed to Florida to bury him, and that was the last time I ever cried. But I was like dry heaving, like crying so much, and then a huge wave of fear just consumed me, and I got really scared, and I just started thinking about like my life, and every all the decisions that I've ever made post him passing away, and it just got so overwhelming. So then I grabbed my notepad, like what Jen told me to do, and I started
Nice.
writing everything down
Good.
like as fast as I could, and I saw my hand just like floating on the notepad while I was
Hmm.
writing it, and it kind of felt like Jen said, like like when we were talking, she's like, yeah, it was like the most beautiful cursive ever, but then like after you snap out of it, it looks like a kid scribbled it.
What the hell does it say?
So that's how I was writing. I was like, oh my God, like I saw my mom, my dad. I was writing everything down, and then I got like after I wrote that down, I put the t-shirt back on, and then I was like, okay, let me get back into the zone really quick. But I was still like, I had to take a couple minutes to kind of like recoup myself, like to try to like just calm down from
Yeah.
all the crying. And then next thing I know, I saw like a stripes of a tiger, and then it started changing and morphing. I didn't see the tiger in general, but just like its fur, and it kept changing and twisting and changing, and then like all of a sudden it turned into like a wood carving of the stripe of the tiger. And then like then it morphed again, and then I actually saw the tiger just staring at me.
Hmm.
And you seem like on like those animal shows where it looks like the tiger's about to like
Yeah.
kill its prey.
Mhm.
That's how it was looking at me. And it kind of like got up and was kind of like growling a little bit. And mind you, like this is all listening to like uplifting music at
Yeah.
this. I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't listen to anything like else than that, because um, it was just uplifting music. But the tiger just kept looking at me, and then it kind of like stood up, and I thought it was gonna like come charge at me, but what it did was it just kind of like got up, growled a little bit, and walked up towards me, brushed up against me, and walked past me.
Damn.
And then when it did that, I was just like, "What the hell?" And then I got so angry at that moment, and I wrote down in my notes, "I feel so lost without my dad. I have no guidance."
Hmm.
And excuse me, it just I didn't even think that was gonna happen, and I got so upset. And then I started thinking like, why did he have to die?
Hmm.
You know, my dad died lung and liver cancer because he smoked and drank a lot,
Hmm.
and he was a good man. Like, granted, like he did a lot of things like that. You know, he made his fair share of mistakes, right? And I don't fault him for that because I did the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was so angry. I was just like, why did he have to die? You know? And um, and then I started thinking about every decision that I made post him passing away up until this point. And it's crazy. It's like I felt like I was in control of my whole life. That every decision that I made was mine and mine alone, and it was my decision, and like I did this, and like yeah, like I'm a man, and um, but when I really sat down and thought about it, I was out of control of every decision I made post him passing away, because when he was alive and he was in my life, like it was very structured. It was very like it was disciplined in the household. Like my dad came from like my parents fled from a communist country, you know. So when they came over here, my dad was always like he's seen war
Yeah.
like over there, and like people getting blown up and shot and killed and whatnot, right? And he used to always instill in me like when you stand up, you put your hand over your heart and you're a proud American and all that stuff. And um, he was just it was very structured, like on the way he did things. But after he passed away, I lost all of that.
Yeah.
And then that's whenever I felt like the decisions that I made was I was in control, but I was really out of control. Like um, I had no structure. I had no
Guidance or yeah.
none,
Yeah.
none. And then I met Brian Gorley, the painter, and he kind of like he had the same personalities as my father in a sense. And then I meet you, Pat, and it's like you're very structured in how you do things as well. You're very disciplined and very. And then I met a man. I told you, the former Special Operations Green Beret,
Yeah.
T. Lamb.
Yeah.
You know, like, and then I started really thinking about these three most important influential people in my life, and it's almost like my dad. Like the more I think about it, I feel like my dad, even though he's no longer with me, is he's kind of like, hey, I know I know I'm not with you anymore, right? I'm no longer with you, but go to these men
Hmm.
and they'll guide you. And that's how I felt. I was just like, I started really sitting here and thinking about everything. And for the first time in my life, ever since I started trading till now, like trying to chase this dream, I feel like I have the most control. I'm in control now, even though, but the one thing that kept popping in my mind, the number one word is discipline.
Yeah.
I traced it back, yesterday. I was just thinking and thinking. And I was all like, I don't have enough discipline because my father is not in my life anymore. And he was the one that was instilling that into me. And now I meet these three amazing men that are guiding me. And it's just like, but it's almost like I feel like sooner or later I got to take the training wheels off.
Yeah.
You can guide me all you want and everything like that, but you can't hold my hand forever.
Yeah.
I got to do this on my own. I got to obsess now on being extremely disciplined on everything that I do.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest takeaway that I got from the experience, you know. Um, Excuse me. I just,
No, it's understandable. Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's a heavy experience, right? And
yeah.
I find it really interesting that whole experience, like what it turned into, stemmed from that tiger, right? The stripes, and then it turns into that. And jungle
Mhm.
cats and cats in general are something that are it's very common with this,
Hmm.
and
I knew that.
which is super interesting. It's like, why would you
Yeah,
think of a tiger? Really, really, you know what I mean? So it's
yeah.
and him like basically stalking you and then running and just brushing past you. It's all and that
Right.
fear buildup, and it's almost like it shows that a lot of that fear is in your mind, right? Or there's something that is just it's like it's plaguing you. It's in your head, right? And you're always thinking about it, and there's a weird buildup and a tenseness to it, but then it just
Mhm.
goes past you, and then it shows you this, right? Like, and
Yeah.
those are the experiences that are completely transformative. And I think getting experiences like that, you did it the right way. Like, that's you're going to get so much more out of it too, the longer that you process it and the more time
Mhm.
that goes by. Because I was telling you this, and I've mentioned this before. You might, even with this, let's just say, for example, you might think it's one way, right? Give it a few
Mhm.
months, something might hit you that it's like, oh, wait a minute, no, I was looking at that wrong. It's like
Mhm.
this. And then you get more out of it, and it keeps kind of morphing from there, and you're just learning more and more lessons as time goes by, which is that's what you want to do. And where people kind of mess up with this is they're doing it every day, every couple of days, every week, every couple of weeks. It's not enough time. You need time in order to process this. This is heavy shit, right? Like,
Mhm.
and this is just
Mhm.
one experience, right? And your next experience, it could be less than, or it could be heavier. Like, it depends on what you need. And I know a lot of people throw that around like it's like, the mushrooms or whatever the plant medicine is, it'll give you exactly what you need. Maybe not what you want, but what you need. So that gets thrown around a lot. And I find with either cliches or phrases that get thrown around all the time, it gets lost on people, right? Like, and they almost become like dismissive of it, of like the gravity of that sentence or that cliche even, right? Like,
Mhm.
and you're just going to get so much more out of it, and it'll give you exactly what you need at that time. But I think that's so awesome how it started, though, with like, and following it. See, a lot of people, I found talking, because I've talked to so many people about their experiences. Sometimes what will happen is they'll get freaked out, like seeing, okay, they got the blindfold on, or they have their eyes closed, and they start seeing something like those stripes, and they'll not follow it. They kind of get freaked out by it, and then they'll open up their eyes immediately and they want it to go away. And and you really need to chase that, because that right there, that's the lesson. This is how those lessons start. That's the beginning of it, right? And then it gets real scary, right? You got this tiger, he's stalking you, he's about to lunge, and then he brushes past you, and then you have that thought, whatever that thought is, that just comes in, and then that's what takes you down that path. And it's like, don't fight it. That's like the biggest thing. Don't fight it. Just go with it. You're locked in. Like there's no amount of fighting that you can possibly do to make any of these psychedelic experiences float away. Another thing, speaking about like experiences that just kind of go away like that, like to make them go away, are those trip killers. And we can probably even do a whole discussion on this, but it just popped in my head. If you're gonna buy the ticket, you're taking that ride. Take the ride. Like especially when it comes to mushrooms, you're not going to die. You will not die. Okay, it's not going to happen. It's impossible. Yeah. You would need to eat your body weight for even there to be an issue. So let's not go down that road. You're going to be okay. Don't try and end these trips. Don't take the blindfold off. Obviously, if it becomes too intense, yes, I get it. But right at that beginning point, that's where the lesson's coming in. This is the important part. This is the part of the movie where it's like, okay, we're just about to find out who did it. And then what? You turn it off? Don't do that, right? Don't you want to find out? This is why you're here. So don't be afraid. You got to remind yourself when you're in those journeys that's it right there. This is the point where I'm about to be showing something. It can be scary, but it should be like an exciting moment, right? And again, that has a lot to do with wiring and how like to get yourself rewired in these situations, right? Like I just find it amazing that that's how it started. That's so awesome. Like just how that started, and then it brings it in. And a lot of people will stop themselves at that, right? Or they won't chase that, whatever they're like the stripes or these patterns. People won't try and get through. And it's like, that's what it's about. It's like, get through to it, let it happen, right? And then that's when these really important defining moments in your life, transformative moments in your life can happen. And, there's so much more time. Like you just did this just the other day, right? Like that's another thing I don't know if we mentioned. Minh did this, 2 days ago?
2 days ago.
Yeah.
Friday night.
It's extremely fresh.
Yeah, very fresh. So as time goes by, all of the information he was given, he's got to dissect that. He's got to process that. So to get that much out of it at the beginning is really interesting. It's really interesting. Yeah.
It's really funny too, because like, whenever you mention that, like, it's still you're gonna still process it. After I picked up my wife from the airport, we went to this restaurant to go have lunch and whatnot. And I sent that photo to Jen about, when I told you about the tiger and it turned into like a wood carving. And I happened to look up at the restaurant that we were eating at, and there was a wood carving right there. And I looked at it and I just kept staring at it. And I was just like, what the hell is going on? But the whole time, ever since on Friday, whenever I took it all the way till now, my mind has been like just preoccupied with just figuring this out this whole time.
Yeah.
And it's still changing and evolving. And I'm thinking of like I'm coming up with like a thesis of like how to piece all of this together, and I actually called my wife prior to her, landing, whenever she was still out of town visiting my mother-in-law. She told me, she's like, maybe, hun, like you should write a letter to your father. You should write a letter and tell him how you exactly feel and whatnot, and just lay it all just lay everything out on that note, on that letter that you're going to write to him. And I started really thinking about that, you know. And she's the one, you know what? I used to have expectations for everything. And then whenever we got together, she always used to tell me like, there's no expectations. Like we'll plan a dinner or something and it doesn't go our way. And then I would be upset. And she's like, no expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Like just let it go. Just and then ever since now, like whenever we do anything, it's always on the whim. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like if she's hungry and then let's go somewhere. We won't pre-plan anything anymore.
Yeah.
And it always turns out good.
Yeah.
You know, but
Well, it's interesting though, you know, there's two things there. One that just comes to my mind though. So you're living in this, and Pat's talked about this, and this was one of the truth behind the trades with the gentleman that was the nurse, that
Yeah.
he was bringing Eric. Yeah, thank you. He was bringing his day life into his trading. Now, is there maybe a connection there though between no expectations and then just taking a trade with no expectations? Can that personal life either help you or be hurting you in your trading? And this might be just a little off topic, but it just because it's coming up. All these things are there to get mapped, right? The tiger maps to something. The tiger could map to you. You could be the tiger. The tiger could map to your trade and your hesitation and fear of a trade, right? Or it could be mapped to your father leading you and guiding you to something. I mean, it's like, well, where are all these? Because they're all like strands, right? There's strands of reality. There's strands of ideas. There's strands of who we are. Mm-hmm. And so like this post integration time is about mapping and writing things down and putting these puzzle pieces together. So that's just kind of one thing to map. And then the other thing is to be looking for the serendipities, right, that are happening. Like you saw the carving. Is that the right word, serendipity?
Yep.
The carving, and then you go to the restaurant, and then there you are, you find that. So those are, to me, like you're almost finding alignment, because I think, and Pat and I have talked about this briefly, it's like when you start aligning yourself and you remove the contradictions, all these weird things are always like unbelievably harmonious in your life. And maybe by bringing yourself in, you're starting to find that. So I know that was a lot.
No. I actually agree with you, because like I honestly feel like whenever, you know, like I started really thinking about like I still can't 100% make out about the tiger. You know, I'm really trying to analyze this and break it down from an analytical standpoint. It's just kind of like maybe, you know, because usually a tiger is very disciplined too. Whenever it stalks its prey, it just waits.
Oh, patience.
You know, and I was just kind of like, okay, maybe it's trying to tell me that I need to be like it.
Stalk your prey.
You know, because it's like it's so funny. It's because like I said, like when my father was alive, when he told me to do something, right, I never questioned my father, and I just did it because I just, you know, I had a respectful fear of him because he was very strict. But I did what I was told, and I never questioned him. And then whenever I come to meet, you know, Brian, the painter, he would tell me 6 a.m. you wake up, you know, you eat your breakfast in the car, you turn on the air compressor, you turn on the light switches, you prep the car, and it was just a order of operations, right? And then same thing with Pat. Like I never, not once have I ever questioned Pat. Whenever he says jump, I say how high. That's it. I don't ever question him. Like I've never questioned any of these men, that the influential men that have been in my life. You know, even with Lamb, when we went to the gun range and I was training, shooting and stuff, he would be yelling at all the other students and stuff. And then he came to me and I would do something wrong. He'll yell at me. And I never got scared of that. I just corrected my mistake and I just pressed, you know. But I just feel like for me, it's like you're not physically there around me. So then I tend to like revert and go to a different way or try to do things my way, so to speak. And then I'm just thinking to myself, like the whole time I was like processing this, I'm just like, I'm not disciplined enough. I'm really like, when I'm in the groove and I have these mentors like that are looking over me, over my shoulder and guiding me, I do phenomenal. But whenever they're not around and I'm just by myself, it like it's like Alice in Wonderland tumbling down the rabbit hole, so
Hmm.
to speak.
Yeah.
You know? And that's whenever I wrote down, I was like I'm not disciplined enough. Like I have to you it's like pushing a little child on a bike with the training wheels, right? But now the child is 36 years old. Like you got to take off the training wheels, like you got to do it yourself. They can't hold your hand forever, and that was like what really drove home to me. It's like I got to get like super super disciplined.
Yeah.
Like I have to really just hone in on my craft, and whenever I'm done trading, I am done trading,
Yeah.
and looking for anything more than that, and just go about my day.
Yeah.
And every single time I did that, I did very, very well. It was like I excelled very, very well, because like everything that I've ever learned from trading is from you, Pat. Like it's not, I didn't go. You've always been my teacher since day one. I didn't even know what candlesticks were. I didn't even know what
Yeah.
open, high, low, or anything like that. Everything that I've ever learned was from him, and so that was like what I took away from that. And it's like I feel like right now I have like the most control like in my life, and
So do you feel that that's fundamentally changed moving forward? Like what
it,
shift can you feel in your gut that I'm not going back? Like what has definitely changed because of this journey that you did?
it's just the main takeaway that I have is just like the decisions that I make. It all lands back on me, because it's the same thing. It's like it's so funny. Like I never really talked about this, but like day trading, a lot of people think it's like, yeah, of course you're there to make money, to make a living, right? But day trading personally for me has changed my life in ways that I can't even begin to describe.
Yeah.
Like day trading is like it teaches you about life lessons. Like it teaches you about every decision that you make has repercussions to it.
Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and when Pat was saying that it's not a game, it isn't a game because it's like your 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 money is essentially your life in a sense,
Yes.
right?
It's how we provide for our families. Absolutely. Damn straight. It's
And it's
serious.
like you take these losses and stuff like that, and it just it trickles down to your mentality, the way you think, and it changes. Like it taught me for sure. The one of the main things that day trading has taught me was patience,
Hmm.
and like being able to um like to control my emotions, and it trickles down into like my actual life to where it's like now it's like I'm almost like things that normally would bother me now it doesn't,
Yeah.
and I can't even it's if people
Yeah.
that think that say trading is like gambling and stuff like they don't know what the
No,
hell
they
they're
don't.
talking
They
about.
don't know what the
they,
fuck they're
they
talking
really
about.
don't.
No.
No, because like for me it's done so much for me. Like it's like a teacher in its own right.
It is. If
Mm-hmm.
done correctly and you're serious about it, absolutely,
Yeah.
it will change your life, and it'll change your life for the better, not just from a financial perspective, but just
Mhm.
from a life perspective. It will, because it's going to
Yeah.
teach you so many lessons that you can't be taught otherwise. One of the
Hmm.
biggest lessons is having the ability to sniff out people's bullshit, because you can start seeing the bullshit on the chart. The charts are ran by people,
Hmm.
institutions, hedge funds, banks. You start seeing their little tricks, right? So
Hmm.
if you have even a small little bit of street smarts, you can start picking up on that more. There's way more to trading, and that's why I get out of my mind when I see this nonsense out there with like, you know, it's just a bunch of like kids pissing around. And it's like, they'll make money and you're going to lose it all. That's why it's like, come talk to me in 5 years. If you talk to me in 5 years and I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. I'll admit it 100%. I've yet to come back to have someone come back after that 3, 4, 5 year mark and said, yeah, see, I did it my way and it fucking worked and I'm doing great. Because it needs
I've
to
never
be
met.
done a certain way. It needs to be done a certain way. That's it. There's no gray area there. And that's why we do what we do. And it is something that's possible. And this is why this sort of stuff, working on yourself, that's all this is. People, like, there'll be some people that'll watch this that will say, this is drugs. No, it's not. It is not drugs. This is self-improvement at its finest. There's no amount of staring into a mirror or a wall that would have Minh have such a profound experience within 6 hours and completely change his perspective, or Jen on her perspective with her bullying when she was younger. This is such a powerful tool that it's so hard to put into words. And people, I know they're afraid of it. They're scared of it because of the brainwashing and the bullshit that's out there. This is not something to be afraid of. I've said this 1,000 times. Our ancestors have used this for 40,000 years. It's only the last 50, 60 years that we've been told it's bad. Up until that point, it has a longer track record, 40,000 years or 50 or 60 years. Like, what are we doing here? And people just need to stop being afraid. And if they really want to make a change, there are tools available, right? And, mushrooms is definitely one of them. There's a lot of tools. I gravitate towards mushrooms because they're natural. I know a lot of people swear by LSD. That's not my bag. I'm not into that. I don't like chemicals. Yes, it's derived from, a naturally occurring fungus, ergot, but it's a chemical. I want
It's
something
extreme
natural.
process.
I want something that people have been eating out of the ground forever. That's what I want.
Mhm.
Right. And,
Yeah,
there's,
Mother Nature.
yeah, exactly. And there's so many great psychedelics out there, and there's some that are extremely powerful. There's some that can take heroin addiction away like that. Something that they will give you methadone and Suboxone and everything, and they'll keep you addicted to it. Or you can spend 72 hours in an absolutely nightmarish trip and come out of it with your dopamine receptors completely recalibrated to the day you were born. 3 days of torture is hell, or a lifetime of it. It's about choices. And this is what drives me nuts about it, because people will always it's a longer route, but it's easier, right? Instead of, sometimes this can be a quick and dirty, easy fix. It can be, right? It's still going to take work. I'm not saying that it's not. Everything worth doing takes work, right? And I just think it's something that is so important, and so many people are missing out of fear, because why would you hold back on this other than fear? I don't want to do this because I'm afraid of something that may or may not happen. It's like, that's just fear. Get over it. Rip that shit off like a Band-Aid. Like, get her done. If you need help, and everybody needs help from time to time, there's some things that you can't get help from without doing something like this. Period. Yeah. That's why these are here. Why do you think we have those specific alkaloid receptors in our brains? We are designed, the human body is designed to take these things. That alone is the proof in the pudding, man. Like that right there tells you there's something more to it. We are designed to take these, or else we would not have the alkaloid receptor to do it. We just wouldn't. Why would we? Right? Like, question things. Question why we are built the way we're built. And what can I use and what can I take as a tool to help me? That's why they're there, right? Like, yeah, I just think fear is such a big factor in holding people back. And to have the stomach to just send it, just let it rip, man. Let it rip. Let's do it. Get it done, right? It might not be comfortable, But how long did your trip last?
Mine, I didn't go to bed. Well, I took it, I would say, if I can remember correctly, I think it was like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was out of it by like 4:30 in the morning.
Okay, so it lasted that long, but when was the peak over? Where would you say you were like, okay, I'm pretty normal. I may still feel a little off, but
Oh, not that long.
yeah,
It was probably, let's say, probably like by 10 o'clock.
yeah, it's a few hours. Usually
Yeah.
about
So
four
it
to
was,
6 hours.
yeah, it wasn't that long at all. But it's funny that you mentioned that like when people are scared and stuff. I just think it that I would agree with, but also like I think they're just too comfortable and they're not willing to
Yes.
Right.
try to step out of their bubble. And honestly, like it's so funny because like I was thinking to myself like, about my dad, and when someone close to you passes away, there are people that say, not a day goes by that I don't think about this person and whatnot. I never had that.
Hmm.
Like after my dad passed away, I would think about him like every day for about a year.
Hmm.
But then after that, I stopped thinking about my dad.
Hmm.
And I feel like it was almost like I don't want to say I put him in the back burner, but it was like it was buried to where I didn't even, I know for a fact if I didn't even go on this journey, I probably, that wouldn't have been, that was probably something that was buried inside of me that was
Mhm.
waiting to spill out.
Yeah.
And then my wife was even telling me, she was like, hun, like maybe that why you're angry and why
Mhm.
you're upset and stuff like that is because of your father.
Yep.
And like, and I started thinking about it. And then when I read my notes and how I was so angry at him, I came to like this thought process of like, maybe it's not me being angry at my father. Maybe what I'm angry at is that he left, too soon, and I didn't get a chance to absorb as much knowledge and wisdom from him as much as possible. So I'm like out in this world, like left to fend for myself, so to
Hmm.
speak. But then like now that I, take a step back and I think about it, it's like my father's just like, hey, I know I'm not here in this world anymore with you, son, but follow these men. Follow these men that are in your life. They have structure and stuff like that. And it's like almost like he's not necessarily speaking vicariously through you guys, but like just like here's the direction I want you to head in. And now when I take a step back, it's just like I feel like I've had, like whenever the video that you posted, you said whenever someone throws you a ball, either you catch it or you drop it.
Hmm.
I watched the video that you and Adam were talking about, and it's almost like these are the balls that are being thrown to me,
Yeah.
and that I
Right.
have to catch it now
Yeah.
because I've been dropping this like left and right,
Yeah.
and it's like now it's like, hey, now you got to stand up on your own 2 feet. You're not a child anymore, you're a man, right?
Yeah.
Like you father's not in your life anymore, but you have to stand up and walk on your own 2 feet, and that's what you need to do. And that's what I really, when I sat back and I started thinking about it, it's like I'm not disciplined enough. Like I need to really hone in and just put my boots on the ground and just press forward and just truck through everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like freaking great now, and it's well, after I did it, right? Like I told Jen, like I agree with you. I am not taking this. Like I don't know how the hell
This
they'll
work.
take it one day and the next day they'll take it. I'm like, hell no.
No.
This is once in a blue moon for me, because that I felt like I read like a whole encyclopedia from A to Z,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and my brain just felt like so like just it like not a headache or migraine or anything, just mentally like you've been studying for like
Yeah.
a long time, and you're just mentally just physically and mentally drained, and I was actually tired too, but um it was completely worth it. And my like it just changed my whole perspective of everything. Like I feel like I pinpoint, like I took the needle and I was like, this is exactly what the hell you're doing wrong,
Yeah.
and I found it,
Brilliant. Wow.
and it's just like, but it's my choice now. It's like I can either revert back and do what I was doing and not be disciplined and structured, or I can make this change because obviously what I was doing was not working.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously what Pat's doing has been working.
Mhm.
So I just need to stick with him and just
Listen.
keep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I think that that also answers the question too: is this addictive? No, it can't be.
No.
Like you
No.
just
No,
like
yeah.
what do you know, if something's addictive, you would be literally taking it all day, and then the next day,
Yeah.
and then the next day. You can't. It's just
No way.
impossible. There's no way, man. No
I
way.
have no desire. I don't even, I just right now, I'm just like, I have a lot of clarity right now, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. I feel my energy is like really, really high. And, but I don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to take another journey like
No,
anytime
no, it's
soon.
like every 6 months. Like for
Hmm.
me, it's twice a year. I haven't been on a macro dose in a while.
Hmm.
I just haven't felt the need to. I know I'm starting to get to that point now where it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm
Hmm.
due. But it's like it's been a long time. I just microdose, which is something very different. It's just going to help a little
Hmm.
bit with mood and how you process things. But this is way different. A macro dose is just it's once every 4 6 months. You know, maybe if you've got a lot of shit to deal with, maybe it's once a quarter. But even then, it's like I don't even know about that. Like that's a lot. That's a lot to process in that short
Hmm.
span in between. Because that's another thing too, man. I wanted to mention. Just don't force it. If I can give you one piece of advice, because I know you're going to start trying to search for answers in the meaning of
Hmm.
everything. Don't force it. It's going to come to you. I promise you. Take my word for it. It's going to come
I
to you,
will.
and it's going to come to you in the weirdest of times. You can be grocery shopping, you can be in the shower, you can be mowing the lawn, you could be doing gardening, and a light bulb moment will hit. Just like with trading, don't force
Yeah.
it, or else you're going to
Hmm.
exhaust yourself, and you're going to essentially, best way to put it, you're going to lie to yourself because you're going to almost think that, oh, okay, that's what it is, because you're going to start to get exhausted with thinking about it, or you can.
Hmm.
So you're just going to come to the easiest, quickest solution. So don't do that. Just let it come.
Hmm.
It'll come to you. I promise you. There's going to be shit 4 months from now. 4 months from now that you're going to think about. It's like, oh man, that's what it was showing. It's going to come out of nowhere, and that's what it is. You might
Hmm.
you might look at your parents looking at each other dying and turning into trees. You might make that into something else, right? Like
Hmm.
it's all of these things. You're going to get that initial thought, like almost like the circle of life. Like they're just they're alive, fell in
Hmm.
love each other, they look at each other, they die, they're now reborn into basically nature. It's like that cycle, right? So you can look at
Yeah.
that way, right? Which would be an initial thought. Maybe there's a deeper meaning, and maybe 3 months from now, 5 months from now, you're gonna catch on or remember something else that it's like, oh shit, that's what it was saying. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I
Hmm.
gotcha, right? And it can be completely opposite. So it's a little bit of a ride, right? Like, but I think overall, how would you say that, before we wrap this up, how would you say that, like, is this something that you would recommend to someone that has maybe had the same upbringing as you? That is, yeah, I guess we'll start with that. We'll just go with that.
For sure. Like this is like one of the most profound things I've ever done. Like I can't. It's like I would have never thought that the experiences that I had like would happen in the way that the way it did. But like it's something that it's almost like it. I think everybody should try it. To be
Hmm.
honest with you,
Hmm.
I really do. It's like people that are on these these pills. right? But then they won't even give this a thought because
Mhm.
it doesn't, it's mind-boggling to me the more I think about it, right? It's like
Yeah.
you'll take pills and stuff like that, like antidepressants and all that stuff, but then you won't take like a mushroom. Like it just doesn't make sense to me,
It's crazy
right?
to me.
It's brainwashed.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's just like the more I think about it, it just makes me, the main thing that pops in my head is that they're just so manipulated, and they just don't. It's almost like you feel sorry for them because they're listening to like so-called professionals,
Yep.
right? That probably never even tried it themselves,
Nope.
and it's almost like it's almost sad to even think about it like that. But like I would most definitely, like, it's like if you haven't tried it, it's like just, you don't have anything to lose, right?
No.
It's you're gonna do worse taking pills than you do with this.
Exactly. The list
Period.
of side effects of
Yeah.
the most prescribed antidepressant, is probably this long, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
The list of,
Suicidal thoughts and all kinds of stuff.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. It's crazy. It's absolutely it's pure insanity that people will crush those, right? They'll just pound them
Hmm.
back. Painkillers and this and that. And yes, some people need to take that. I get it. I get it. But hey,
Hmm.
maybe there's an alternative. Maybe there's a different way. Real quick story. Like this is
Hmm.
where I started losing my faith in, the medical world. Is I came to my doctor with something and I needed to
Hmm.
take this medication, and it's a medication that once you're on it, you're kind of on it, and it's a very difficult road back. And I did my research, as that's the type of person I am, and I found a peptide. So a peptide in order to reset certain receptors in my brain to bring me back to baseline or at least help. And I looked at the actual study, so the study of it, and it was very promising. The problem is this peptide isn't available in the United States or Canada. It is in Asia somewhere and in Russia. It's a Russian peptide, right? So I brought it to him and I asked him about it, and he said, "No, that doesn't work." I'm like, "Oh, so like what I'm talking about?" He goes, "No, it doesn't work." What? You don't
Yeah.
even know what I am talking about, and you've come to a conclusion that it doesn't work? How fucking ignorant is that? That's a very definition of ignorance right there. And this is someone that I'm coming to, that I'm putting in charge of my health. Fuck that. That's when it was, I'm done. Done with this.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
Big
It's a
problem.
big problem
And
for sure.
and that's where people need to, it's okay. Like a lot of people make it out that it's bad to, be a Google doctor. Doctors will make fun of that all they want. But you know what? There's a lot. We live in an age of information, man. Everything
Hmm.
you could possibly know, if you research properly, is at your fingertips, and you find people that you can trust, or that know from personal
Hmm.
experience that maybe this is a better route. Why wouldn't you try that? There's all of this man-made, anything man-made. Why do you think there's so much cancer out there? Why do you think there's so much depression, anxiety, everything? Man, why not take something that comes right from the ground that you could
Ready to
grow yourself? That, again, I know I've said it a million times, our ancestors have taken for 40,000 years plus.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? It's time we do things differently, because the world we're living in is in trouble right now. And maybe it got into trouble over what? Last 60, 70 years, we would all agree, is where we started getting
Yeah.
into trouble. Okay, so maybe we need to kind of go work backwards a little bit and get back to where we were, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And that's what I got to say on that. You guys got anything else?
Jen, you got anything?
The only thing that I was going to add is I thought, just with talking, to Minh yesterday about his experience and everything, I told him a quote from our first podcast, just, his whole thing, he kind of was kind of echoing this quote. He says, I remember that you said, when you go into your trip, you're a boy, and when you come out, you're a man. And I just feel like that, Minh just was able to really sit back and look at that. And, it's just it's just so amazing to see this, and I know it's always funny to me because every time I go in, I'm like, okay, I want to talk about trading. I need to think about this. And it's like, no, you're going to talk about kindergarten, or we're going to think about kindergarten or whatever. I'm like, I don't, but, I know it didn't go the way that you were kind of hoping or whatever, but it is right. Or Pat's right. It always gives you the lesson that you need. And I mean, just, I could tell we were on the phone for an hour and a half yesterday, I think. And from when we first got on the call to when we got off, or we were about to get off the call, your face looked completely different, just while we were talking about it. When you first called, you were like, man, I said, well, how did it go? And I was like, is everything okay? And we were texting, and then, we got on the phone, and you're like, yeah, yes and no. But by the time, I could already feel you starting to process it. And by the time we got off the phone, like, your face even looked different. Like I could see your brain kind of working on stuff. So it's just really cool to see. I mean, I'm beyond proud of you for just taking the chance to do it, because it is scary. It's a big step, and
then to come on camera and talk about it
is huge.
So quick. Yeah,
just super proud of you. And I just I'm really I'm just, like I said, I was like, you're like, oh, I don't know, I think it went good. I'm like, oh my God, this couldn't have been better. This is amazing. So I'm just really happy how everything went for you. And I hope you, like I said, just take time and journal, and
like the reason why I came on too, it's like, I remember, Tu Lam, like the special operations Green Beret that I met. One time he told me, he was like, each generation touches the next. Like, one person can make a ripple in this world. And it's like, if I can go on here and pretty much technically wear my heart on my sleeve, and just, there might be somebody out there that's going through something that, worse than what I'm going through. I when I take a step back, I don't think that my situation is as bad as other. There's far more bigger problems out there than just me and missing my father because he passed away and whatnot, right? There's people that are, PTSD, like soldiers coming back from war and stuff like that.
And I've dealt with them. I've
Yeah,
I've helped a few. Yeah.
And it's so if I can come on and I can get one person to even remotely consider trying this, then I know I've done something, or I've paid it forward and gave it back, because I know you, Pat, and Jen and Adam, helped me out. So why not come on here and try to help somebody else out? So I'm more than happy to come on here and tell my experience. So
yeah, I'm really excited to do more of these, and of course, we appreciate you coming on, and I know for a fact you're going to get through to people with this. And there's something that we're working on from like a day trading standpoint and a retreat standpoint, and combining these two worlds, and having a legitimate shaman come to do the guidance, not some white dude that has been pissed around with this stuff for a couple of years and now is a shaman with a man bun. No, there won't be any of that. This will be a legitimate guy. And I think that that's something that I would love to do. And I know Adam and Jen would be all over that too. They'll be coming down to help with it. And we're hoping to do that here fairly soon. And I'm just really excited about being able to blend my two passions like this, day trading as well as, plant medicine, because the two go hand in hand. So thanks again, Minh. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Jen. And until the next one, I'm looking forward to it already. I could literally go on for another 3 hours. Like this is,
That's fascinating.
yeah, it really is. And, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what Minh has wanted to share with us. I'm sure there's a lot more that he's going to keep to himself, which is completely fine. And I get it, right? And because this stuff can get super personal. It's not easy coming out and talking about this stuff, especially on the internet, because we all know what the internet is full of. And so again, thanks for having the courage to come out and do this. And again, I look forward to doing this again. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Adios.
Bye.